Hey guys, this is KSP with Tape, and today you join me for episode 7 of Being SpaceX, and today we're going to land on the moon and finish off the Explore the Moon kind of contract. Yeah, so I've already done one of the bits of it, which was return scientific data from the moon, but now I can get all of the rest, which is achieve orbit around the moon, land on the moon, and return scientific data from the surface of the moon. And my other side mission, oh jeez, sorry, which was plant a flag on the moon. So this is quite a big rocket for much bigger than it needs to be. You can easily get to the one man on the moon with 1.25 meter parts. Quite a small rocket, but because of fairings, it's much easier to do it with a 2.5 meter rocket, and it wasn't that expensive. And I might as well have a big ass rocket like a Saturn V, because Saturn V was like a 10-meter diameter rocket. In real solar system, I was messing around and I built a full-sized Saturn V, which worked really well. So I might be doing some videos in real solar system, which I'll explain a bit later, which ties into this a bit. But I'll explain that later. Right now, we just need to get to the moon. And this is a very small upper stage because the first stage was so powerful and had so much delta V. But yeah, I'll have loads of extra fuel, which I'll be leaving in low Kerbal orbit because I don't need it. So there's no point taking it to the moon. Yeah, let's just freaking go. Obviously, Jebediah Kerman needs to be the first to land on this body. And because this is a manned mission, I don't have to worry about my poor satellite network, which I will be. Today I'll be launching my better one, which will be better explained later, which will cover everything. But yeah. So yeah, there's kind of an intersect with the moon. Basically, if you want to know how to get to the moon, when you see the moon rise over Kerbin, just burn. It's not particularly precise and isn't probably the most efficient way to get to the moon, but it works for me. So, you know, that's just a good way to get to the moon. Anyway, grab as much science as possible. I have 2 mystery goo units, so I have a spare one to take some science from wherever I desire. So, just basically the most profitable place for science, because I want to get as much science as possible, because I am driven by the need for science. Anyway, so I'll just burn the rest of this transfer stage, getting orbit around the moon. Doesn't fully circularize, but I have a lot of delta V in this. You can see there's kind of 3 small fuel tanks, kind of attached in various places. I quite like this lander. It's good. It's a nice lander, and it takes lots of science to the surface. Anyway, I better grab some of these reports so that I can take more on the surface of the moon. And yeah, just basically get as much science as possible there. Already got quite a bit. Don't have any transmission devices on this. And remote tech, because this is just a patch, kind of screws with some of the transmitters, so that's not great. Having quite a lot of problems with remote tech, which will be explained later a little more. Anyway, let's land on the Midlands. I always tend to land on the Midlands first, just because it's easy, and I don't know, just cause. Yeah. So I'll grab some surface info so I know my exact altitude above the surface. It would be nice to have a readout where you can see your exact kind of a readout that isn't in the IVA view, because you do get radar altitude in the IVA view, which tells you your true altitude above the surface. But it would be nice to have it up with the rest of the readouts, like vertical velocity and the altimeter above sea level. It would just be a nice addition to the game, I think. But maybe there are reasons, like just to make it a little harder. But anyway, here we go, coming down nicely. Not a particularly efficient landing, and I do slow down to as slowly as possible. In real life, when you land on something, you basically want to zero your velocity, so you're going basically not moving when you touch the ground, so it doesn't put any unnecessary force on the spacecraft. Not particularly important in Kerbal Space Program, but I like to do it anyway, just because, mainly for show, really. Yeah, so I touch down in about half a meter a second, which is alright. It almost kind of falls over because it's got a really, well, I just should have landed about 90 degrees flip, so there was less likely to fall over, but everything's fine. Anyway, let's start taking some of these experiments. 40 science from the mystery goo unit. The materials bay will give me 100 science, and the temperature, well, the thermometer will give me 32 science, which is nice. And take a crew report, and get out, take an EVA report, although I've already got one from flying above the Midlands, so that's not particularly useful. So I will take an EVA report from the surface, and a surface sample, of course. Grab some of that moon rock, which is worth a lot of money. not because of its composition, because it's not particularly useful, but because there's so little on Earth, because we only could take a little bit back from the moon, it is worth quite a lot. Anyway, yeah, plant our NASA flag and think of something inspired to say. Well, first I'm going to put that it's Midlands landing, so it reminds me that I've already landed there, so that I don't land in the Midlands unnecessarily, which is always a nice thing to, do. Midlands landing. Lanning. Do I change that? Good. A lot of spell checking. It's actually in the bro code that bro never spell checks. I have a copy of the bro code. If you don't watch How I Met Your Mother, that probably means nothing to you, but it's a wonderful thing. And something inspired. It's one small step for Kerbal. Not for Kerbals, because it's one small step for man, so one small step for Kerbal. I should probably capitalize that K. Yeah, I thought of something very inspired, very original, just came right out of my mind. Very, because I'm very, very good with words, so I came up with this amazing phrase. It's one small step for Kerbal, one giant leap for Kerbal kind. Very inspired. I don't think anyone's ever said anything like that ever. Anyway, let's grab some of this science from the experiments. The best, you should really get it in orbit because it's easier rather than trying to maintain altitude with an RCS pack, which I do realize later. So I kind of mess around with this for ages, kind of stupidly. So I can never quite hit the button, so I accidentally reset the canister, which is dumb. So, but should probably switch back to the ship and get the data again. Although I can't get it because there's no one. I can't send a command because there's no connection, and I have no one in the pod, which was dumb. So I'll just get back in the pod, I guess, and retake that scientific data. Really, just take the science in orbit when you're weightless and can fly around freely. Yeah. So I kind of realized that. The annoying thing about the materials bay, as I've said loads, is it's just because you can only get the data within a certain distance, and because it takes a distance from the middle of the unit, and because the materials bay is so thick, you have to be really close to it, which is really annoying. So yeah, eventually I give up trying to get it from the Science Junior, and just decide to do it in orbit where I'm weightless, and that just makes lots of sense. So I just get back in the pod, and it's probably time to leave. I don't spend much time on the moon because I don't have much life support, and because there's no real point because I've been to the moon so many times. Yeah, anyway, I should probably I'll speed it up again as I start flying, back into 4 times time accelerate now? No. Now? Yeah, now we're back into 4 times time accelerate because you'll have seen me leaving the moon lots, unless this is the first time. Well, you'll have probably, it's not particularly interesting. It's just firing my engine, and I have quite a bit of stuff to fit into this episode. So, lots of 4 times time accelerate. Anyway, circularize into a nice orbit. And I'm actually already in a pretty perfect position just to burn right home, so I don't have to wait any time. So, yeah, just ignite the engine again and start going home. And I have so much extra delta V because it's a very light spacecraft and has quite a lot of fuel that I can just burn straight home and get my atmospheric intersect and do a bit of aerobraking and come right back to Kerbin. And now I can grab all the data while in orbit and when I'm weightless and have lots of just control over where I am. Although I do send this ship into a spin, but it's fine. I have lots of experience kind of RCSing with annoying spacecraft. But yeah, there we go. Let's just go back to Kerbin and show them all our scientific data. Hopefully not hit any of those satellites on the way down. That would be embarrassing. Yeah, I forgot to take that extra mystery goo unit, but it doesn't really matter. It wouldn't have got me a huge amount of science anyway. And I do get quite a lot of it from this mission, and I got a bunch more science from doing all those contracts, which, yeah, and you can see the surface module exploding, and then it shoots right past us. Just flies off into the distance because physics unloaded for it, so yeah. Anyway, yeah, so just hopefully land, probably get some more science from the surface, and then do many other things. Yeah, I always fire the abort system just because it does lose me a bit of money, actually, but I don't know, it doesn't really matter. I get a lot of money from this mission because I've completed all of the Explore the Moon. I think it's, well, I've got a lot more science to get from the moon and Minmus and stuff. Break the abort system on the way down, grab a bunch of scientific data, and get back in the pod. And just recover the vessel and get a lot of science and about 500,000 funds. You can see I have tons. And I completed all of these missions. Yay! So that's good. Um, Time to get lots of parts. I want some. I want some small RCS tanks so I can make better satellites, which you will see very soon. And just kind of, yeah, and those small landing legs and a couple of other things. Anyway, it's time to put my good satellite network in orbit. This is the definitive satellite network. I shouldn't really need to put any more in for for Kerbin stuff, because each of these satellites is equipped with RCS, so I can actually put it in each satellite in a perfect 6-hour orbit so that it doesn't slip out like the rest of my satellites and kind of just not be a very good network. So yeah, this will be the definitive network. It's obviously going to geostationary orbit. It's quite a big rocket for doing it, but it's taking 4 satellites to orbit because I think 4 is better than 3, because it just is. Yeah, and this has it has pretty much just enough fuel to get to geostationary orbit with its payload. But it's quite a nice rocket. But I get a lot of this shaking around because that SAS unit's doing something weird. And now it gets ridiculous. 4 times time accelerator especially, but it was quite annoying. And I couldn't really figure out what was going wrong. I thought that'd help, but now it's just going freaking crazy. What you gotta do is turn off the torque on the SAS module. Should have really put that on the lower stage, because I don't need it on the upper stage. Anyway, yeah, you can see all of these have a MechJeb unit and RCS so that I know exactly, so I can put it in exact 6-hour orbits, each of them, which will be wonderful, because if they are all in the same orbital period, they'll stay at the same distance. And I finally have those articulating solar panels so that I don't have to kind of put lots of effort into covering my satellites in those kind of solar panels, really. So yeah, just kind of burn into a geostationary orbit. I'm not really sure of the most effective way you should do this, but I just kind of burn as efficiently as I think I can do. I'm not really sure. Just kind of burn prograde until it's at the right altitude, and that looks roughly right. It's not really hugely important what the altitude is, as long as they have the same, or each satellite has the same orbital period. They'll stay in sync and give me nice coverage. And you can see my coverage from all those other satellites. The other satellite network is actually all right. It does give me coverage most of the time, but it's not perfect, especially because my lower orbit satellites kind of slipped out of sync. Anyway, let's push myself into a geostationary orbit so that I maintain my position over the KSC where I get all my signal from. I should really put a bunch of transponders around Kerbin so I have coverage from all. That would actually be really smart, because that's actually a really good idea. Not have so much effort on the satellite network. Just have them stationary on Kerbin, because then they won't move. God, that would have been easier. Wow. Although there'd have to be loads because Kerbin's a sphere. So that wouldn't actually be a very good idea. Don't listen to me ever. Anyway, we should probably deploy our first satellite. And you can see the orbit info on the left. The 4th column down says orbital period. It's now at 6 hours and 18 seconds. I want to take those, well, it's more like 19 seconds. I want to take those 19 seconds off and get an exact 6-hour orbit, which will require a lot of RCS finagling, which you will see. Yeah, each of these has 4 dishes, because mainly for symmetry reasons, but it is good to have 4 because it's more than I need, so that's good, because then I can point at multiple things. I need one pointing at mission control, one at my active vessel, so it gives me downlink, and probably point the other 2 at more satellites in the network so that they maintain links to all of the satellites, so I get kind of a coverage all around Kerbin, which is, the plan. Anyway, lots of bursting of RCS and getting my orbital period very close to 6 hours there. I want to get it exactly. So I'm going to shut down a couple of these RCS thrusters so I have less thrust, so I have more control. So each like blast of RCS brings me closer to 6 hours, and if I have less thrusters on, then it'll make smaller differences and will allow me to get closer to it. So yeah, I'll shut down these 2, so I just have 2 RCS thrusters. Yeah, and just kind of keep burning each way until it's kind of perfectly. That's 40 milliseconds off, because I think maybe it'd be 400, because there's 1,000. Yeah, there's 1,000 milliseconds in a second. So right now I'm 30 milliseconds off, which is still too many, I think. Now I'm 50 off. I do get very close. Actually, I get dead on. See now, exactly, that's 6 hours. Exactly 6 hour orbital period, which is what I wanted. I was very impressed with myself. So if I can get all of them to do that, then they'll all stay in the exact same position, and everything will be dandy. So yeah, I'm just kind of using this old satellite network to maintain my position. Yeah, so that's actually pretty good. And those are all pointed at the right things. I need to point one at active vessel now, because if you point it at active vessel, it'll always point at the vessel you're flying, and that's how you maintain a connectivity with the vessel you're flying. Anyway, that's pretty good. So I should, but I take a quick break because I went away from it and came back and did a little bit more science. So I grab a few missions. I don't really need to explore Duna right now because I don't actually have the comms range to go to Duna with a probe at least, or the life support to go with a Kerbal. We want you to test. I might as well test these radial engines because that's very easy and it gives me quite a bit of science. And I might as well take this because it pays quite well, and it's just returning scientific data from around the moon. It's might as well extort as much money from the moon as possible, especially because that last launch cost me 50 grand. Yeah, all those satellites on that rocket, that cost 50 grand, because there's so much tech on each of the satellites. Anyway, just a quick jump with these engines, and I'll get a bit of science and a little bit of money, because that was in the contract, and landed perfectly. This would be quite a good idea for like a shuttle between, like, say, Minmus and a station, if I, designed it a little better. Gave it some batteries and stuff. And why is the screen gone black? Okay, it must just be a problem with editing. Okay, it's fine, we're back now. I'm sorry about that. Maybe I'll put in, like, a picture of a cat or something. I don't know what it is with me and putting pictures of cats in. Anyway, let's get back to these satellites and eat more into perfect orbits. Now I need to drop these a quarter of an orbit behind, because there's 4 of them, so if they're all a quarter of an orbit distance from each other, they'll maintain a pretty good network with each other. So I'm going to take my orbital period back an hour and a half, because that's a quarter of the 6-hour orbit, so it'll be a quarter of an orbit in front or behind the other satellite. If you don't have enough fuel, you could just put it back by, say, half an hour and just do 3 orbits to get behind. And I'm getting some weird glitching with this UI, and it doesn't seem like much, but it is very annoying and makes it quite difficult to actually set up networks. And that is the first thing you'll see of all the annoying glitches I get in this episode, which I will discuss a little more later. Anyway, yeah, so this needs to be dropped back. I have so much fuel that I just went back an hour and a half in my orbit so that I could do it all in one. And I'm just going to switch. And this is another annoying glitch I get. We're nearing the end of the episode because it just gets so glitchy I couldn't do it. And I go back to the Space Center and everything's broken. Okay, that is the end of the episode, but I have some talking to do. Basically, I'm getting so many glitches with this because of remote tech, the cloud mods, just a bunch of other stuff. And I switched to that other satellite and I couldn't see it, I couldn't focus on it, I couldn't do anything with it, and it's getting very annoying. And this happens quite a lot. I tried to leave it out of videos, but I left it in this just to make a point. And I might be ending this series because the glitching with the mods is getting kind of unbearable. I'll try and make another episode, but if it just carries on like this, I'm going to have to end it because it's just too annoying. And I have another KSP series running, Solar Civilization, and if I cancel this, I'll be doing not a series in real solar system, but like frequent videos. So there will be stuff in place of this, but I am doing a lot of KSP series anyway. I've got Operation Black Hawk, Solar Civilization, this, and I will be doing rescale real solar system stuff anyway. So I'm sorry about that. I'd say there's nothing I can do, but there is. But it's a lot of work to do it with all those glitches. So I'm sorry about that. I will try and make another episode, but don't count on it. So I'm sorry about that. If you're sad about that, I'm very sorry. Go watch some Solar Civilization to console yourself because, stuff. So yeah, this has been this episode, maybe the last episode. As I've explained, the glitching is horrible. This has been KSP with Tape. I will see you next time.